Welcome to the Better Together podcast, where we look at ways that we can come together and help each other in the ministry. Today we have with us Dr. Matthew Pinson. He's the president of Welch College, and he's joining us from the campus there in Gallatin to share with us some of how the campus has dealt with the COVID-19 crisis. Dr. Pinson, thank you for stopping by to be with us today.
Thank you for having me, Eddie. I'm here sheltering in place at the president's home on the campus of Welch College.
That's good to see you're following our governor and our mayor's orders. So thank you for doing that, President Pinson. Hey, we know that this is a special time of difficulty for everyone, but it also brings some special challenges for colleges, especially private colleges, doesn't it? Share with us a bit about how this has impacted Welch College in particular.
Well, we had spring break that was supposed to end on March 23rd, and instead of bringing the students back, we had to extend spring break a couple of days. And then we had a big meeting with all our faculty and staff and had some training to show our faculty how to do online learning, or remote learning as we're calling it. And we had to take a couple of days to do that. And then we started our classes online or remotely. I mean, faculty are doing it different ways. Many are using methods like Skype and Zoom and Google Meet to do lectures on video, and others are using other means. But we started that on the 25th, and then recently we announced we're going to have to continue that remote learning until the end of the semester. And that means we won't be able to have commencement at the regular time in early May, and we won't be able to have our students on campus for the rest of the semester. So that's the greatest way that it has hurt us, is just not being able to have our students here and to be able to interact with them and have normal academic courses face to face, which is really our bread and butter.
So, but you've been able to continue on. Your students are going to be able to finish their semester, and even though it is at a distance, so you have been able to adapt. I understand you also had a staff member that was a healthcare professional that has tested positive for COVID-19, which really shows why all this is helpful, because more and more people are, especially people that are having to have direct contact with folks, are being impacted. How is that particular staff member doing from a health standpoint at this juncture?
He's doing very well, and he's an EMT, and so he understands the importance of these matters and understands health care. He and his family are quarantined in their apartment, and they're all doing very well. But it's interesting because we actually did the online learning thing back in early 2017, when we had a delay in the opening of our campus, when we built a new campus and moved out here to Gallatin. So there were several weeks where we were all working remotely. We weren't on the old campus, but weren't in our offices in the new campus, and we were all doing classes remotely. So this is kind of deja vu for our faculty and staff. We've already done this. Mm-hmm. And so we've got a little bit of head start.
So that's pretty cool. You've been there, done that, and maybe helped the staff and maybe even some of the students that experience some of that. There are some things we need to remember, though, about the college. It does create a couple of financial challenges that were not really expected. Were they? Can you talk a bit about that and how we might help?
There's been a whole lot of, there was a story in USA Today on this very thing about a week ago, and there have been a number of stories in the higher education press about the special difficulties that higher education institutions are going through in this crisis. And the reason is that we who are in the business of educating dorm students have a special problem, because our students are not paying room and board. And so when your students, when most of your income comes from residence hall students, and they all have to go home and you have to give them a refund for their room and board charges, then that puts an extreme burden on institutions. of higher learning, which are putting more emphasis on dorm student education. But in addition to that, of course, to having to refund their money for those charges, what we're looking at is we're not able to have welcome days and senior days and visit days and on-campus visits. And schools like ours, private higher education basically gets its students from campus visits, especially in the spring before you start your fall semester, because students are making last minute decisions about where they want to go. And so we're not able to have any of those special touches. We also do a lot from Welch College's vantage point. We do a lot of personal visits where we have people from our enrollment services department who go out and they'll meet with parents and students one-on-one, and they'll talk about financial aid, and they'll talk about the admissions process and getting their deposit in for the dorms and that kind of thing. We can't have any of those visits now. And so that personal touch and that face-to-face relationship that we normally have on campus and in visits, we can't have that. So that's another way that private higher education is going to be impacted greatly. And then, of course, they're doing a lot of surveys now in the higher education community of parents who are saying, I think I read recently nearly 40% of parents in a survey that was done just recently are saying, I think we're going to keep our children home. There's a chance we're going to keep them home, even if things kind of get back to normal a little bit. Not only the economic distress that's brought on a lot of families, but also just the uncertainty with the social distancing. And so even if we're kind of back to normal on social distancing, a lot of parents are saying, we think we need to keep our kids home, at least for a semester until all this is over with. So there are ways that, and of course, just like every other nonprofit, schools like ours, our giving is going to suffer because people's churches' giving is going to suffer, and we get a good bit of our support from church offerings and church budgets. And so as that suffers, we suffer like any ministry. And in addition to that, of course, we get a lot of our funds from donors and alumni. And as their stock portfolios and investment portfolios have suffered, so they won't be able to give as much to the college. And so, colleges are really in a tough spot because in addition to those normal philanthropic sorts of methods of support, most of our funding is coming from room, board, and tuition. And so that is going to suffer because we can't recruit like we normally would. And a lot of parents, the word is that a lot of parents will just keep their kids home in the fall. And so a lot of what we're facing is down the road. And so there's a lot of things that go into this from the higher education standpoint.
And so we've just had a stimulus package that was released, and you hear that some relief is happening for families and happening for small businesses, but really that same kind of relief does not happen for colleges. When people think of private colleges, they tend to think of the Ivies or schools that have large endowments, not so much for many of our small private colleges like Welch. So it really means people want to take time to pray for Welch, take time to think about continuing your giving if you give to Welch, and do what they can to support you.
We are studying the CARES Act and seeing what may be available for some relief for the college. And there are some higher education components to the CARES Act. The higher education community had asked for a great deal more in terms of relief for higher education, and yet it has not come in as great a numbers as what the higher education community had hoped. But we still do hope that there will be some forgivable loan sources and other relief aid that we will get. But like you say, a small private is not going to have opportunities that a lot of our larger schools are going to have.
Well, we want you to know we're thinking about you, we're praying for you, and we encourage our folks that are listening to encourage students that were going to go to Welch to continue in that direction. And If you're a regular supporter, we encourage you to continue to think and to continue to give, because this ministry, as of our other ministries, desperately need that at this time.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, and I want you to get your listeners to pray for our students, because this is going to be different for them. They're so accustomed to the face-to-face interactive learning and to that face-to-face mentorship that our professors give them. And this is going to be a very difficult time. And it's also going to be difficult for them to be apart from each other and to be away from campus. So be in prayer for them. Be praying that they will grow spiritually, and that this will be something that the Lord can use to produce maturity in their lives.
Well said. Well, thank you, President Pinson. Thank you for stopping by to be with us. And we'll be thinking about you, and we'll be praying for you and for Welch College.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moody. We appreciate it.